There are stupid things that play through your mind endlessly, and no matter how many times you tell yourself to get over it, you keep coming back to it. One such memory for me is driving my parents' 1987 Scirocco Scala from the Midlands to South Wales. I hadn't been driving for long, and it was the first time I would get to drive it in earnest on fast, twisty A roads. But that plan was thwarted by slow-moving traffic that didn't want to go the speed limit. The defining moment that sticks in my mind is getting frustrated and passing a car on a bend. Thank God there was no one coming. It was a stupid move that put everyone in my car and any oncoming cars at risk. Hopefully we learn from our mistakes, and every time I think about the Scirocco, I'm reminded I was a naive and reckless driver. But my second thought is always about how cool the Scirocco was. It was the first car I got to drive that had a bit of power, and the low centre of gravity was electric to drive. This is the Volkswagen Scirocco story. Since 1955, the Karmann Ghia had been Volkswagen's sports car. With no money in VW's coffers, the car was not much more than a Beetle converted by Karmann coach builders with the help of styling by Carrozzeria Ghia. VW had essentially farmed out the work to get themselves a free car, and they shared the profits with Karmann. The car did well, but as the 1970s dawned, the car had been on the road for 15 years and was looking decidedly dated compared to Volkswagen's upcoming cars, the Polo, Golf and Passat. Giorgetto Giugiaro had been chosen to design two of those upcoming cars, the Golf and the Passat. While working on this, he got in contact with the Karmann company to create a successor to the Karmann Ghia and presented the design to the Volkswagen board as the Karmann Ghia Type 14. With Volkswagen spending money on both the Golf and Passat development, plus the cost of purchasing NSU in 1969, the board didn't want to invest in the project, so Karmann decided that they would put up the financing, with some help from Volkswagen's wind tunnel to fine-tune the shape. Or at least that's what the German Wikipedia site tells me. Another source tells me that Volkswagen asked Giugiaro to make the Golf and Scirocco designs, he made them, and VW funded them. One thing's clear though, Karmann was charged with building the car, and they were intrinsic in its history. They would build all Mark I and Mark II Sciroccos, with Volkswagen focused on building higher volume cars. The Mark I Scirocco had more than a passing similarity to the Alfa Romeo Alfa Sud Sprint, and it's no surprise that both were designed at roughly the same time by the same design house. But the Scirocco would debut at the 1973 Geneva show, 3 years before the Alfa. Volkswagen expected the Golf, its Beetle successor, to be a big seller. There were concerns about ramping up production and getting it right, so the decision was taken to release the lower volume Scirocco first. As it used many Golf parts along with the Golf chassis, it would help iron out production issues before Golf production started ramping up. The original intention was to call the Golf the Scirocco after the hot desert wind, and the Scirocco would be known as a Scirocco Coupe. According to Volkswagen's brochures at the time, the name was chosen by Giugiaro himself. But Volkswagen changed their mind and renamed its family hatchback as the Rabbit in North America and the Golf elsewhere. Thankfully, they didn't call the Scirocco the Golf Coupe or, heaven forbid, the Rabbit Coupe. Volkswagen made a big thing of the Scirocco's Italian styling, and Giugiaro as being the stylist. It talks of the car's thrusting, masculine good looks. Were they allowed to print that? Of course they were. It was the 1970s, when apparently it was okay to send postcards like this to people. The car received a tartan cloth pattern on the seats, and a similar pattern would be seen on the later Golf GTI. It was offered with an automatic gearbox from the outset, although as with all automatics at that time, it sapped the engine's power. And power was in short supply. In its native Germany, the car was available in two engine sizes at launch, 1.1 litre and 1.5 litre, developing only 50 and 70 horsepower. The Scirocco's shape was writing checks the engine just couldn't cash. But while it took time to accelerate, stopping wasn't a problem with a diagonally linked dual circuit braking system. The interior was well appointed for the time. A carpeted interior, headrests on the front seats, a voltmeter and a rev counter to remind you this was a serious sports coupe. A sporty steering wheel bearing the classic Wolfsburg logo and a large single wiper to keep the screen clear. Volkswagen would remain undecided on the number of windscreen wipers throughout the Scirocco's life, moving between 1 and 2, or 3 if you include the rear screen. Just a year later, in 1975, the power had increased substantially with the introduction of a 1.6 litre engine producing 85 horsepower. And the car got its North American debut, but only with a 70 horsepower engine that still got a respectable 0 to 60 time of 10.3 seconds. Volkswagen pitched the Scirocco as a fast, sporty, yet fuel-economical car with exotic Italian styling, and with hot American summers the car was offered with air conditioning. Front-wheel drive made it a lighter, better handling car than its North American contemporaries, and the hatchback design made it a lot more practical. With the car getting 38 miles per gallon on the highway, this also spoke to customers' pocketbooks who'd been spooked by high gas prices. With motorsports being a great way to show off your car in North America, Volkswagen took the Scirocco racing in the Trans Am tournaments, winning first in its class in 1977. The lack of US-approved rectangular headlights meant the car needed 4 round lights, 2 for low beam and 2 for high beam. This design was carried over for some European models, although rectangular headlights were also sometimes used. And the US mandated crash laws meant slightly larger bumpers. The famous GTI logo appeared on the Scirocco in 1976, just a few months before its sister, the Golf, would make it famous. Fuel injection would bump the 1.6 litre engine's output to 110 horsepower as it did for the Golf GTI, giving the car real speed for the first time. However, this more powerful version wasn't always available in all markets, and the car would be renamed as the GLI. Sales hit a peak of 87,000 cars in 1977 and 78, and this coincided with small styling changes. The front bumpers were revised and the front indicators enlarged. The dashboard got a smattering of wood veneer to spruce it up, and the outside would get trim kits on some models to give it a sportier look. By 1979, the 1.1 litre engine was replaced by a 1.3 litre. In the UK, the Scirocco only came in one trim level, the 85 horsepower 1.6 litre GLS. Normally, this is a sign that sales aren't so strong, but Volkswagen was adamant in their brochures that offering more than one model would be an injustice to the car. So it must have come as a bit of a surprise to Volkswagen when they added the Scirocco Storm to the lineup that same year. It offered the GLI's 110 horsepower engine, a trim kit, plus leather steering wheel and seats. Volkswagen tried an open-top version of the Scirocco, with the conversion being done by independent garages in limited numbers. But the car was too close to the Golf Cabrio, and so volume production was never pursued. As the car neared replacement, there weren't many updates. It got the golf ball gear knob from the Golf that made less sense on the Scirocco, but was still a welcome fun addition. And that knobbly gear knob came with a 5th gear for the first time. The 1982 Mark II model had been in the planning stages since 1976. Volkswagen wanted the car to be bigger, in particular with more headroom in the front and back, and a lower drag factor. To save money, the decision was made to continue using the chassis from the Mark I Golf, so the Mark II Scirocco was more of a restyle than a new design. Although Giugiaro offered a design for the new car, VW went with a competing design from their in-house stylists. The new design lowered the drag factor from 0.42 to 0.38, and by pushing out the sides, occupants not only got more headroom, but also more elbow room. The car was also 16 centimeters longer, which meant for better cargo space, and the GTI name was back, offering the same 110 horsepower engine. But despite a lower drag factor, the car was slower, with it being almost 130 kilograms heavier. Fuel economy was about the same as the old car, but that didn't stop VW from promoting the car as both sporty and miserly on fuel, perhaps epitomised by their slogan, the new Scirocco, excitingly reasonable. The base CL model even had an econometer on the dashboard. In North America, the ugly federally mandated bumpers were back, and they seemed to be more pronounced than on the old Mark I car. Despite the update, sales were disappointing, with just under 52,000 cars sold in 1981, 25% less than VW had hoped for. Volkswagen worked with Oettinger Performance to develop a 16-valve version. The engine displacement was increased to 1.8 litres and was tuned to develop a healthy 139 horsepower. It was released in 1985 and became a top-of-the-line model for the rest of the Scirocco's life. Again, an open-top prototype was produced, this time by Karmann themselves, but once more it wasn't put into production, probably because of the disappointing sales of the new model. VW Motorsport tested out a 16-valve G60 version, but the G60 engine would end up in the Scirocco's successor, the Corrado, as an 8-valve version in 1989. But possibly the maddest Scirocco was the bi-motor version in 1983, also by VW Motorsport. Bi-motor of course means two motors, and yes, that's just what they did. Like the Jetta before it, the car had two 1.6 litre performance-tuned engines delivering 54 horsepower more than an Audi Sport Quattro. With VW and Audi having separate motorsport teams, it's not hard to see that there was some rivalry there. Those two engines used two 5-speed gearboxes, and both gearboxes and throttle cables were mechanically linked together. Given the car had an engine in the front and the back, weight distribution was nearly perfect at 53/47. A year later, VW produced an updated version with a specially moulded body and Audi Quattro wheels. The new 1.8 litre 16-valve engine was used, and instead of using two 5-speed gearboxes, VW were using a pair of 3-speed automatics, so gear changes could be precisely and automatically timed. Karmann and Volkswagen experimented with various special editions to generate some more sales. The White Cat model appeared in 1985, and this was likely the inspiration for the 1986 Scala model. With the Scirocco being a relatively low-volume car, Karmann undoubtedly made some extra money selling parts to other car companies. The rear lights appeared on the Aston Martin Virage and the front lights on the Bristol Britannia. The Britannia's rear end looked like it was borrowed from a Morris Ital, and I'm loving the rear lights that were lifted from a Benford van. The Scirocco's successor, the much pricier Corrado, was launched in 1989. The Scirocco soldiered on for another few years with special editions before bowing out in 1992 after selling nearly 800,000 cars, and the Corrado ended production 3 years later in 1995. And that was about it for the Scirocco until 2006, when VW announced a new version was being built. Like the original Scirocco, it would be built on the same platform as the Golf, in this case the 5th generation. But unlike the original Scirocco, this version wasn't destined for North America. The reason was blamed on the exchange rate between the dollar and the euro. With the competitive US market, Volkswagen couldn't price the car to a point where they could make a profit. The new Scirocco's squash Golf exterior made it mostly unchanged to production in 2008, but the same couldn't be said for the interior. The custom switchgear was replaced with the same logical but bland buttons that appeared on all Volkswagen cars at the time, from the solid Passat to the funky Beetle, reducing the excitement of the car somewhat. In fact, to save money, the dashboard had been lifted wholesale from the Volkswagen EOS. But on the positive side, it did make it easy for Volkswagen to offer many of the options from these cars on the Scirocco. Like the original Scirocco, the car was available with both frugal and exciting engines. The 1.4 litre TS got 47 miles per gallon while delivering 122 horsepower. Or if you wanted an emissions-cheating diesel, the 2 litre TDI got 62 miles per gallon. For more power, the 2 litre petrol engine gave the car a Golf GTI level of excitement with 200 horsepower. And the following year, Volkswagen released the Scirocco R with an engine from the Audi S3 that produced 265 horsepower. By now, Volkswagen manual gearboxes had grown an additional gear, so 6-speed boxes were available. Volkswagen also offered their dual clutch automatic that made fast acceleration from the lights almost stupidly simple. The company tried out racing versions of the Mark III Scirocco, starting with the GT24 that competed in the Nürburgring 24-hour race. VW worked on a Scirocco R32, but work on this was abandoned. But from this came the Study R concept. 2014 brought an update to the Mark III Scirocco. The engines got a small bump in power across the board and the car got some improvements both inside and out, but changes were pretty minor. The update did little to boost sales and production ended in 2017. Karmann and Volkswagen made a good team in designing a sporty alternative to VW's family-friendly hatchbacks. The coach builder filed for bankruptcy in 2010, another victim of the Great Recession. Volkswagen bought the factory and has continued to make Golf convertibles there, and also sporty cars with the Porsche Boxster and Cayman being manufactured. It's a fitting tribute to a company that pioneered a sporty Beetle and followed it up with the iconic sporty squashed Golf, the Scirocco. Okay, you know the drill by now. Patrons, you're brilliant. Subscribe if you want to see more of me rambling on about cars and making mistakes in the process. Patrons get early advert-free access to new videos. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.